Hello, all you hardcore boxing fans out there. How are you doing? It's Russ here from Poker's Corner, the biggest gob in sport. We say the things that nobody dare say. Today I'm joined by my close friend Julian from West Yorkshire in Dewsbury. How you doing, Jules?
I'm all right. The reappearing man is back. I've made more comebacks than Sinatra lately, mate, haven't
And Alex Higgins.
I?
Well, where do you want to start, mate? I've got nothing wrote down. Not wrote down. We don't need no wrote down. It's all in here, isn't it, for this month? So, where do you want to start, mate?
Probably want to start on my favourite subject, performance enhancing drugs in boxing, or should I say my least favourite subject, but the most compulsive to me of them all because it's one of the most important ones in boxing. So I don't always get the chance. I say this every time as a caveat. I don't always get the chance to watch all these interviews, Eddie, the guard, etc., Spencer. I've not seen anything on TalkSport since last week, since the controversial, well, in people's minds, the controversial Dubois fight. So I've not seen much, but what I did do was I tuned into Eddie Hearn's interview on Matchroom, so on his own promotion, as you'd expect. You and I just run with these things. Sometimes we're factually incorrect, but we don't have the finance to edit things and get them out straight away and all that kind of thing. So we shoot from the hip and we shoot from what we know. But however, I thought, I'm going to listen to Eddie because I often shut off from him, and especially where Conor Ben and where drug streets are concerned. So I'm going to listen to him and I'm going to try and give him a fair hearing where Julian's concerned. And unfortunately, I just struggled yet again. So we've got Eddie Hearn now, who's got such strong views on cheats in boxing, on drugs use in boxing, that he's now going to be the czar and the anti-drug ambassador of clean boxing. And I find it ironic. So I know you and I chat about this stuff all the time. So as I watched it, I'm like, come on, listen to Eddie, listen to what he says. Don't let your prejudice get in the way. But as I listened to him go on and on about Matchroom, we're the only ones with the funds to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to get other promoters to come along with us. I couldn't help but think, why now? Why now, Eddie, are you becoming the czar of the clean boxing program, the leader in the field? And before I go on with an epic speech, over to you, Russell.
Well, I watched the interview and it's like he's, I think they've been caught out doing something personally. There's something that's gone on and they're trying something different now they've got that, they're in that deep. He's gone other way, hasn't it? Instead of Matchroom get all the tests, they get the results. And we're not saying they are, but have they been lording it over fighters with test results? This is what we want to know. And it all goes back to the Dylan White thing over 4 years ago, doesn't it? Because that were all shrouded in mystery. But they got caught on it, didn't they? It leaked. Thomas Hauser broke the story, didn't you know, Muhammad Ali's biographer. Thomas Hauser leaked the story. And that all went away, didn't it? They still fought, didn't they? But has there been any others? And is it now coming to an end where they could be in trouble, or somebody might be going to talk? So now they've gone the other way. They're like the drug police now, aren't they?
Well, I have one theory. So first of all, I think most people have heard of Rudy Giuliani, who was the mayor of New York. He was part of the White House and Donald Trump's team, etc. Now, Rudy Giuliani in the 90s, I can't remember exactly when it was. I'm going to clean up New York. I'm going to clean up corruption in New York. And when someone like that, who's obviously dirty, he's a dirty politician, when someone like that talks about cleaning up New York, cleaning up the streets, cleaning up corruption, law and order, etc., you have to ask why suddenly someone who's got a little bit of a shady background, this guy.
Oh, Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah, he's
let me just stop you there. Now you mentioned that now. Sorry for butting in. Rudy Giuliani, for all you people who don't know, he's the guy that wouldn't let John Gotti have his lawyer, Bruce Cutler, for his 4th trial, because John Gotti had three trials in the 80s, and he wouldn't let him have his lawyer for the fourth one. And they also, it was the first time in history that the jury was not in front of the defendants, whether the jury were behind the screen. It was the first time ever, apparently, and and he's now knee deep in it and looking at prison time, isn't it? So I think the Gotti family are going to feel a little bit aggrieved, aren't they? Really, because basically Gotti beat the system, did he? But the system then beat him, but they did it illegally, didn't they? They've been screaming it at for 30 odd years. Well, I wonder how they're going to feel now. But go on, I'll leave it.
That's where
so people know who he is. Go on,
Perfect backdrop, Russell. So you know me, I always like to have an analogy when I'm talking about something, and I'm not calling Eddie Hearn, Rudy Giuliani, for example, but what I'm saying is I'm going to clean up the streets. I'm going to clean up the dirty politicians. And when someone with a lot of presence and a lot of influence suddenly decides to be this czar of good taste and czar of perfect behavior, when we know deep down they're no angel, you have to ask why they want to do that. And they want to do it so they can manage the corruption. They can manage the influence, they can manage the corruption. They can also look great from a public relations point of view. And Giuliani during 9/11 became a bit of a hero, actually, didn't he? How he was always visible during the aftermath of the Twin Towers, and he was this great person. And ultimately, like you said, look at where he is now. So the reason I'm saying this as a backdrop is Eddie Hearn, we know for years has defended drugs cheats in boxing. He's defended his own drugs cheats and he's attacked anybody else. But what he hasn't done with the matchroom power and the matchroom millions over the years is he hasn't campaigned to be the czar and the ambassador of clean boxing. He hasn't done that. He doesn't need to do it because every time one of his fighters fails a drugs test, they're innocent. Scheming, skullduggery, witch hunt. We've all heard it 1,000 times. It's the board's fault, it's this fault, it's that fault, contamination, the evidence is going to blow you away. But all of a sudden, what we're getting now is failure after failure after failure, and Eddie wants to clean up boxing. So I've got a theory. Now, I think it's looking like, and I'll move on to strict liability in a second. So Eddie was explaining how they're going to clean up boxing, how they're going to, have increased testing. But he also did say at some point, once we get to a finding, we have to hand that over to the local authority or the officials at the time, Border Control, State of Michigan, Nevada Commission, etc., etc. So the Conor Ben situation is not looking great. It's really not looking great. So all of a sudden,
what is he fighting on September 23rd in 22 days?
I've got my ticket. Have you not seen the posters and the billboards? I've got my ticket, mate. He's fighting. I think he's fighting Conor Ben. I think he's fighting Liam Smith or someone like that, or Kell Brook. He's got a fight lined up anyway, or maybe it's Manny Pacquiao, who's also going into the Olympics. But Eddie Hearn now is going to clean up boxing. Okay, why? Why now, Eddie? It's been dirty for a long time. So, is it because you really need to look great in front of the officials and great in front of the regulators of boxing? Are you trying now to someone who will ambassador since last October? You went at the Border Control and you went at everybody. You went at VADA, you went at UCAD, you went at everybody. All of a sudden, you're going to work with these guys, you're going to clean up boxing. Now, I think the appeal, the UCAD appeal and the British Boxing Board of Control behind the scenes is probably looking pretty good. So if Eddie Hearn can put himself as this knight in shining armor and start to talk about putting real money into boxing and real money into drug testing, is effectively courting favours from the Board of Control, who's struggling financially. And I'm not suggesting, before anybody slaps an order on Porky's Corner, I'm not suggesting backhanders. I'm not suggesting anything like that. I'm talking about doing the right thing, courting favours, saying the right thing, promising to help sport, and maybe, just maybe, helping sport involves you help me with Conor Ben.
Well, let me just stop you there. Right. What we said last year was Conor Ben's going to have to be the poster boy to get out of this one. Did we say that?
Oh yeah. Oh, we did.
There, go on, carry on now. Yeah.
We absolutely said that. So right, okay.
That was last resort for them, won it after everything.
Yeah. So where this has really gone wrong for them, and I don't delight in this, and I don't feel bad about this. It's you reap what you sow.
Yeah, yeah.
Behavior gets what it gets. Okay, you've done things wrong in your past, and you've been punished for them, haven't you? You've been punished.
I made my punishment even worse when I was doing it.
You lost your liberty, right? I've done things that I'm not proud of in the past, and it's cost me in more ways than
I lost my liberty and my canteen on basic regime.
So ultimately, these guys are now not getting their own way. So I'll tell you what now, let's change tactic again. They've changed tactics like so many times, we've lost track, haven't we? Now, what Eddie started talking about in his interview, and he never linked the name Conor Ben to strict liability. And it's called planting seeds, and it's when you think you're clever than everybody else and people can't see through what you're doing. He started to say, but what we do have to look at is strict liability, because it's really harsh, actually. Strict liability is really, really harsh because there are people out there and athletes out there who genuinely didn't know what they were doing. And he actually had a little slip of the tongue, and he addressed it. He goes, you could have had a meal, and then he went on to something else. And what he's doing is he's planting seeds, which is effectively Conor Ben. First of all, now that's an admission from Eddie. It was in his system. Clomiphene was in it. We all know that anyway, by the way. But clomiphene was in his system. Never mind the 270-page report. Never mind your protests in the early days. You now more or less say it was in his system. But he's such a clean athlete. I think he's asking for leniency with the border control and UCAD. And he's basically been this caped crusader to clean up the sport. You scratch my back, and I'll do everything I can to help boxing.
They're going to bounce Conor Ben around old schools and young offenders prisons to say no, just say no. You know, like Zamo and Grange Hill.
Be careful what people put in your food.
I'm going to say yes.
And be careful what people put in your food, and be careful what you're taking, and personal response. So listen, the fact that it was really going in on strict liability, I just thought, okay, you bang to rights, as I've said. This is plan number 6. Do you know what he's like? He's like, remember the hooded claw, Dick Dastardly, when he was after Penelope Pitstop in the old cartoon.
I'll get you, Penelope Pitstop. What's that? The Anthill Mob.
The Anthill Mob. So the Anthill Mob are the British Boxing Board of Control, okay? And he's basically the hooded claw, and he's trying every single plan he can think of, you know, to get what he wants, and it's cringeworthy. And listen, this is what we said. This is tantamount to groveling. He's groveling to the public. He's groveling to the organisations. He's groveling to other promoters. We've got to work together. We've got the money. You guys don't have the money, but if you work with me, we can all make boxing a clean sport. And it's so flawed, but it's as transparent as a bride's nightie, this strategy that he's got. And I saw that, and I thought, Eddie, I just don't buy it. You Rudy Gotti, I don't buy it. And do you know what? This is just buying favours and trying to look good. Because what did you and I say? We've said, you and I have been consistent, Russell, all the way through.
Yeah.
They can't own up to this now, because they've dug the hole way too deep. And if they'd have just emptied the sins early on and thrown themselves on the sword and begged forgiveness, we'd have forgiven them. But they've told a lie, another lie, another lie, another lie. And now it's like, do you know what? And I have a feeling they're after favours with the border control, who will turn around and say, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We're going to give you a 12-month ban based on strict liability, not 2 years. And that'll time just nicely for an October fight in the UK.
Well, this is what they're all going to try and work it out. If it's an 18-month ban, that's October, backdated. Yeah, an 18-month ban. If it's a 2-year ban, it's a quick appeal, knocked down to 18 months, like Kid Galahad's. So it might be a 2-year backdated and then a 6-month off on appeal like Galahad's. That's what it could be.
I think so. And I think it's so obvious what they're trying to do now. You watch, right? If they get their own way with Conor Ben, you suddenly watch all this testing that they're talking about doing just go away. It'll just go away.
What about if somebody comes forward and said, I spiked Conor Ben?
Well,
that's enough for appeal, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the strict liability, because you turn around and say, "Oh, I was buying his eggs from so and so dodgy corner shop in Portugal. I didn't realise." It's so easy. So all of a sudden, right, what he's saying is, if you think about what the contradiction in what Eddie's saying is, more rigorous testing, but more leniency when anybody gets caught. So you get caught. What do you say, Russell? Didn't know I was taking it. I've got no idea. Someone's a scapegoat who doesn't matter. And let's be lenient, because he kept saying strict liability. It's really cruel. And we know from history that it's not always accurate, and things happen, mistakes happen. And again, Conor Ben, you talked about there's been red flags about following Conor Ben around for the last 3 years, effectively a different fighter from the one we knew. The red flags are there, but no one's talking about the red flags. They're now basically throwing themselves at the mercy of the Boxing Board of Control, because the way Eddie said Boxing Board of Control were going to work with the Boxing Board of Control, he said it almost like in a fond manner, like he's sneered. A few weeks ago when they launched the appeal, remember when Nicholas Parsons turned around and said, "What do you think about the British Boxing Board of Control appealing the decision on UCAD?" He went, "No comment," as though to say, "You know what I think, they're absolute scumbags." And then he was talking yesterday about the Board of Control in like a fond way, in a nice way, because he hasn't got what he wants. So he's trying plan Z, and this is where we're at. It's almost like buying flowers and treating someone you've cheated on, and just boom, 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 just keep doing it because it's fake, it's empty. You're doing it to court favour, you're doing it to get back in there, and everybody can see through it. And ultimately, if you really were going to be this boxing czar, Eddie, you'd look at performance-enhancing drugs, you'd look at corruption within scoring, you'd look at having neutral officials on your shows when you've got a British home fighter or a Matchroom home fighter. You'd look at all those things. You're choosing the one thing that you want to clean up in boxing, when we all know there were so many things to clean up in boxing. You're choosing the one thing that's relevant to you, because your final cash cow is the one currently who's sidelined, and you're going to do anything you can to get Conor Ben back in the ring, and that includes be this knight in shining armour for boxing. See through you, Eddie. See through you, mate.
Do you know, when I look back, I mean, it's no secret that I was Team Eddie years ago when he had Froch, right? When you look back, Eddie were a breath of fresh air when he came on scene, wasn't he? He weren't bitter. Brilliant. He weren't bitter.
Nope.
He were a breath of fresh air, and everybody fell in love with him. He basically put British boxing on the map. But somewhere along the line, something's happened. He's gone from being Mr. Family Man Eddie, wholesome Eddie. Yeah, he's fetched up in privilege, private school, in a limousine every day. He's got the wife, he's got the kids, the house, the Bentley, the money, the watches. He's got loads of watches, loads of suits. He's got everything. And he just shrugged it off and said, "Well, I can't help it if I've been born into it." And everybody liked him. And then somewhere along the line, something happened. And I think what happened is he fell in love with himself. A bit like me.
Very easy to listen. This is the truth, right? You know, I always say man in the mirror moment. We all have a little bit of narcissism about us. We all have a little bit of an ego. Yeah. We're all a little bit selfish, but everybody's got different degrees of those things. And I think what happens is you become too rich. I mean, listen, I think this has happened to Tyson Fury. I know Tyson Fury struggles, of course, with bipolar and things, but I think it's happened to Tyson Fury. You become so big and so powerful, you lose perspective. You can drive around in your Volvo or your Passat or whatever, and you can pretend you're a man of the people, but you've lost all sense of perspective, because you can do what you want and have what you want. And what's happened with Eddie is little things start to not go his way. Little things, and he behaved like someone who's very privileged, who's never told no, even though he says he's been told no all his upbringing. and he was treated tough, but he behaves like someone who's been told no for the first time. And I think you're right. And I wasn't Team Eddie. I've never been Team any promoter. And when I was on a couple of matchroom shows with my fighters, I never went up to the promoters and got photographs. I never did any of that stuff. I just kept myself to myself and did what I had to do. But I'd heard in the early days of Matchroom, and Chris Aston and other people said to me, Eddie was sound, he was really good, and like you just said, breath of fresh air.
Paid on night.
Oh, very good payer. Matchroom are great payers. All those things, and a real boxing fan. And then he just got out of control, didn't he? And then the different versions. I mean, it's only a small thing. The different versions of his boxing background himself and his sporting background, and it just becomes a little bit inflated, and it becomes a little bit.
What Eddie's cricket career when he was opening back for Essex under-19s and opening fast bowler, steaming in like Bob Willis.
It was an all-rounder like both of them, wasn't
it? Do you remember when I watched it actually the other night, because you know I like cricket, and it was Bobham's Ashes 1981. Bobham scored. He scored 149 not out at Headingley, but they still had to bowl Aussies out. And then he said the game wasn't over then. And what we had then was Bob Willis building up a head of steam. And you've got Bob Willis steaming into wicket in them white boots they used to wear back in the day. But Bob Willis's were then from like really early 70s, these big old size 12 boots, steaming in with spikes on. Look like some like Yeti. Steaming in with ball, and he ended up with 8 for 32 or something. Got 8 wickets, and Bobham got the other 2 wickets, I think. But Bob Willis steaming, and that every time I see that, I think of Eddie. I think of Eddie steaming in, but there's no team photos. These are from Essex under-19s. You know what I mean?
I'm pretty sure he's done sports, and I'm pretty sure he's capable in various sports. You know, he's a tall guy, he's a big guy. I don't doubt it, but it's just.
What about the rugby one? That's the classic, the rugby one.
Brentwood. Brentwood, yeah.
Eddie, you've got to be trolling us with that one. Rugby, cricket, boxing.
Brian Jacks. He's like Brian Jacks' superstars. Kevin Keegan. It's
Brian Jacks with squat thrust. Dips. Parallel dips. Oh.
Well, he's doing the press ups now, isn't he? In the amateur gym, showing them all that. I do the speedball and the press ups and stuff. And I love when he does that kind of stuff.
I love it when he goes running up to punch ball and punches. Eddie, stop it. Eddie, stop it, please. You're like Walter Mitty. You're like John Fury. He's getting like John Fury, isn't he? Under the hard road. Yeah. Under by way of.
Yeah, the 3-0, 2-0, 4-0. There's a lot of versions. It might have been in a ring, you might not. Who cares? But it's just that it's like we call stolen valor. And the thing is, it's like, you know, if you put yourself out there, you're going to get a bit of stick at you. And to be fair to Eddie, when you see him, he can take a bit of stick, can't he? You know, I've seen various things. I've heard things from boxers. You know, but this Cape Crusader, this clean boxing
Crusader.
That's what he is. It is the Cape Crusader. Is going to clean up boxing. I mean, there's more injustices on a matchroom show than any other show I can think of. It's just like it was, and I think that's one of the things that turned us against Eddie. Actually, was when you saw the Beltrano and the Ricky Burns fights and stuff like that. You just started thinking, "Oh, come on!"
What a Ricky Burns fight? Sorry,
was it Beltrano?
Beltram flogged Ricky Burns. He broke his jaw.
That's what I'm saying. But when you started getting those bad decisions, didn't you, on the matchroom shows? And we all got a bit tired of it then, didn't we? We're like, come on, you got to knock someone out to get a draw now. And it just become a little bit cringe. And I think it's a few things. And maybe it's a British thing, and we hate people who have success. We wish them success, and then we knock them down when we get it. I don't know. But how he's handled, you know me, I've been on here for a couple of years now. Give Eddie a little bit of stick, give Eddie a lot of credit. But I can't get over, and Frank Smith, you don't get away with this. You're the CEO of Matchroom. I can't get over Well,
is that what I were at Dennis's? When I CEO?
CEO, good drop so and so for the station. For
Oh, okay, go pick the man wraps up for the show, and then like that box of gloves from RDX. Oh, am I a CEO, Dennis?
Yeah. It's like it's what was it David Brent said about being a team leader. It's a job title someone gives you when they don't want to do something themselves. And I think it's that. It was for me. I'll never change my tune. You tried to put a guy who's emaciated, 157 pounds, then you tried to cover up and push that show forward. We all know you tried to get that show to happen, and then to turn around and say, I didn't have the power to cancel it. It was a board, yada, yada, yada. We've all heard it. And since then, just awful. And I think they've tried every strategy, which is to stick twos up.
7 stories now if they do this one.
Yeah, we've got the new story now. We've got the almost an admission there was strict liability, but please be very kind to Conor because he didn't mean it. And it's like, this is the problem, isn't it? 7 stories. Every one of them's been completely different to the other. And this is why we've got no trust in you, Eddie. And this is why I don't believe me. Not talking on behalf of anybody else. I don't believe this nonsense about wanting to clean up boxing and clean up the sport. Because would you be cleaning up the sport if you had no fighters who had no adverse findings, and all the findings were on Queensberry shows, or all the findings were on Golden Boy or Top Rank shows? Would you still be wanting to clean up the sport of boxing, Eddie?
No, it'd be hammering them now on IFL.
Smashing them to bits, mate. And that's, you know me, talk about the same thing every single time. Consistency. I want consistency, mate.
Yeah, it's when you were going on about their Cape Crusaders, I was thinking about Reggie a couple of weeks ago, and he got in my car and I says, "What have you got on?" He says, "I'm Superman." He had all Superman outfit. I said, "You know, you remind me of." He goes, "Oh," and I said, "Sean Murphy, do you know that snooker player?"
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
He did an interview and he were strutting about as a 12, 13-year-old dressed as Superman.
Really?
He said he wanted to be Superman. And he's from privilege, you know him. He's privileged. His dad was a professional golfer and all that. Like,
Joe used to be Iron Man. Joe used to be rounded on Iron Man suit with pads and mask and stuff. And the stuff we used to.
But my Reggie's 10-year-old. He's not a grown man. Like running around in jammers just because Canelo's got the same pair. Canelo didn't wear his at the weigh-in, though, did he?
We know we did, don't we?
Oh, God.
It must sound like we're just bashing Eddie, but it's just...
We love bashing you, Eddie, because we know you're watching.
We love it, Eddie, because
we love it.
We know you're watching, definitely know you're watching. I won't tell you how we know, but we know. Or you're definitely watching Russell, but it's just, come on, own it. But he can't do anything but defend Conor now, can he? Because he's had to, because of everything he's said. And final one, I just wonder if they're still suing the Border Control, UCAD. Who else was suing? They were suing a lot of people.
Suing everybody. Dylan White was suing WBC. He's suing Jake Paul and Logan. One of them. Paul
that's right. Yes, suing Jake Paul.
They're not suing anybody. They don't like legal issues. They're not suing Jessica McCaskill. All they've done is slap her down. That's all they've done. They'll not be suing. It's dead money to them, and they haven't got time to be running around with legal issues like Bricktop. You know what I mean? They haven't got to.
It's what we're on now. Russell, is it Wednesday?
Yeah, Wednesday.
September on Friday, mate.
Wednesday, 9:30 at night on a Wednesday. So, and it's Wednesday, September, Friday.
So we got
3 weeks, 2 weeks till fight week for Crusher Ben.
2 weeks till fight week for Crusher Ben. Countdown.
Is Crusher Ben going to come back this year? I say no, and I say the Boxing Board of Control, from what I'm hearing, whispers that are doing the rounds, they're going to hammer them. They're going to hammer them. This is what the word is. Because of how they've dealt with it. Because if they let him off and they fight this year, everybody else is going to be like, well, where are we going with it?
It's a free-for-all.
It's a free-for-all, so we all might as well take gear. I'll just go to Conor Ben route and say, listen, they're all doing a shaggy, aren't they? It wasn't me, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. Nobody ever admits out like that. So
as we say, so Eddie, in this new role, we're going to have five times 5 times as much testing, but only half the penalties, because strict liability is really, really, most of the time it's an accident, you know. So more testing to be seen to be doing something, less penalties. So as you said, everybody turns around and says it's been spiked. No idea how.
That's the only last one that can come out with now, isn't it? Oh, well, I spiked him. I've come to admit it. I'll take my punishment.
Yeah.
Well, we spiked him with eggs, but I gave him eggs up. I gave him them eggs. I felt awful. I didn't want to say it. Somebody's going to have to be the patsy. It could be anybody, couldn't it? No, yeah. It could be that doctor.
Could be the Dr. Usman, yeah, Dr. Sajid Usman. But if
it's a who done it.
It's a who done it, but we know who done it. And it sounds like we're hammering a guy and we don't want him to have a career, but let's continually hold this thought. Had Chris Eubank Jr. got in that ring, emaciated, barely hydrated because of the clause that put on a rehydration limit, had he got in there and something happened to him against a fighter who knowingly or unknowingly had taken performance-enhancing drugs, because clomiphene, no matter what you want to say about it, it's about a massive increase of testosterone in your body via a natural way of doing it. But no matter what happens, what if something had happened to Eubank Jr.? We'd be having a very different conversation right now. So those guys need to think themselves lucky. They need to acknowledge they've done a really bad thing trying to push this fight forward.
Eddie, Frank, Smith and Callum.
Yeah, all 3 of them be absolutely...
What about Frank Smith's role in all this? The brother-in-law, eh?
I mean...
And Eubank didn't even know. Can you imagine them on a Sunday dinner, having the Sunday roast all sat together in Essex?
I mean, that's as bad as it gets, isn't it? It's like, you know, it's like, you know, like to your girlfriend or your wife. It's like, you know your brother. Oh, I can't tell you. No, no, I can't tell you this. And it's just, it's wrong. It's like that, isn't it? It's just like, I'm not even going to divulge this information. The whole thing stinks, and the corruption, the cover-ups is appalling.
Why are the media not asking them these questions? Coogan Cassius from IFL, 800 and whatever thousand subs, but only averaging about 16 a video. Why is Cougs not asking these questions? Why are Boxing Social, Nicholas Parsons? Why is Rob Tebbett, the hardcore's hardcore, apparently he's more hardcore than Kent? Why is this shower not putting it on him? And what about Judge Jordan? Simon Jordan, why ain't he getting stuck into him? Or the Gad, or Juggies Oliver, the Three Musketeers from Talksport, all hanging out the back of Queensbury lately. Why aren't you getting stuck into him about this? And I mean properly. I don't mean tickling them.
And they're all, the thing is, they're also naive and stupid and covering their own backside. What they don't realise is, if they're all strong and they all go hard on this, first of all, it's for the good of boxing. But second of all, Matchroom and everybody else need the press as much as the press need them. So if everybody was consistent on this topic, instead of debating it, and were consistently frowned upon this, Eddie still needs the press to promote his shows. Without the press, you're screwed. So he's not going to hold a grudge against every single person for speaking the truth. But what they do is they're just brown noses, and just a small select few of them like, oh, I don't want to lose access. And maybe Coogan feels a little bit of loyalty to Eddie, because I guess IFL and Matchroom was, well, it definitely wouldn't have been IFL without Matchroom, would they? Without all that early access and everything, all the help he got off Eddie. So maybe he feels some kind of obligation. And I could kind of get that in some way, but you're still not asking any tough questions. But in terms of like Spencer Oliver and the Gad, and I have to say that the most disappointing one of them all is Simon Jordan, isn't he? I mean, he was what we thought would be a breath of fresh air. He would be a great person to have at the British Boxing Board of Control, but not somebody who, first of all, shows very little strength. He's now blowing whichever way the wind goes. We're seeing that with him.
No, he's been manipulated and softened up, Jordan. He started out this Mr. Tough Judge Jordan.
Yeah.
Been softened up. That's what happens. They get a few VIP tickets, a few free meals. How you doing? A few handshakes. How you doing? Up. Softens them up. It happens all the time.
And you don't know if the producers of TalkSport are having little conversations by saying, just ease off a little bit, because, you know, we're going to get no guests on here the way this is going, and you're going to impact us. You wonder what conversations they're going to be having. But Simon Jordan, who I really, really liked, utterly disappointing. And the thing is, as well, he's had two shots at Eddie. And
he's Norton too.
Yeah, so Eddie might be now, what is he now, 8-0 or something, Eddie is like, he's done Jordan twice, hasn't he? So 8-0, 6 by way of, it's embarrassing, mate.
Well, he's ready for English title.
He is, isn't he? He's Rocky Marciano. We carry on at this rate, Rocky Marciano's record will be the heavyweight record.
WBC Silver International.
He's there, isn't he? He's hovering there about, mate. 8-0, yeah.
Craziness, mate. It's craziness. What do you think the old man thinks to it all? Old Bazza. What do you think Barry thinks? Do you think he might feel a little bit let down, or is just going to leave him to it? Or do you think he's away with Farahs, do you think? Think he's away with Farahs?
You know, this weird stuff pops up on YouTube, and something popped up the other day, and it was a clip of Barry Hearn talking about Anthony Joshua. And he said, Barry Hearn said, Anthony Joshua is the hardest puncher since Ernie Shavers.
Who said that?
Barry Hearn, something popped up on YouTube the other day. He was bigging up Anthony Joshua, and he says he's the hardest punching heavyweight since Ernie Shavers.
A lot of rubbish. He's never been a big like, Joshua's never been a massive one-punch KO artist. Never.
I mean, so
and he knows he can. And if you don't believe me, go ask McCracken.
So he hits harder than Mike Tyson, Deontay Wilder, Lennox Lewis. It's just Jerry Cooney. Where does this stuff come from? Who comes up with this stuff? It's brilliant.
He can't throw a punt. He can't swivel properly. He couldn't even swivel properly. After 5 fights, they were having to teach him how to deliver the punt.
He couldn't. He couldn't.
They were having to say, no, you're supposed to bring it from in, get all your... Look, it's all going to be talking like as if I'm a trainer, but after 5 fights, they were worried how we were trying to deliver the big right. 5 fights. So that
there's not a lot of snap, and there's not a lot of recoil in the shot, because the recoil always gives you that little bit extra. And he's a very strong athletic guy. He's got heavy hands, but the biggest puncher since Ernie Shavers.
Last time he iced anybody properly was Gary Cornish, wasn't it?
Gary Cornish. There you go.
There you go.
We're going to move on to part 2, Russell.
Yeah, we'll move on to part 2. Pop, pop, bang.